All right, so we're gonna get started here. So Steve, we're gonna talk about a little bit more into the meat of things now, right? We already had two episodes, which we have also recorded for future references as well. And now we want to get into the meat of it, and we're gonna talk about how to make the property rent ready.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And let me I know you have a couple questions for me on that because it's such a big topic that a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't really deal with it on a constant basis. And I think because they don't deal with it on a constant basis, they don't really know how to handle it. And it's one of those things that you kind of keep your eyes shut. You don't think about it until it's in front of you. And when it is in front of you, now you have to make sure that you're doing it right. And hoping and praying you don't get ripped off, right? Because we all hate getting ripped off by vendors and contractors, and you hear all these horror stories. But I think the biggest reason that happens is you don't plan, and they don't have a set schedule of what you want done, when it should be done, how it should be done. And even if you have one property or 50 properties, you need to set relationships with vendors, and it can be a very synergistic thing to have everybody working on the same path. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I don't think they treat vendors correctly. And in turn, they don't get treated correctly. And then they have this weird, oil and vinegar relationship. But, the one thing I'll say before we get into this is we have learned that a vendor, that any business you're in, whether it's a rental business or whatever, it's the relationship business. You're in a people business. Same holds true when you're doing a make ready on your property to get it rented. You are in a relationship business with a vendor, contractor, real estate agent, tenant. It is the relationship to the nth degree, because you are basically if you have one property or five properties and you're doing the leasing yourself and you're the front person, you are the customer service rep of your company, which is the face of the company. So that I'll kind of leave it at that, but I'm a very strong believer in that.
Yeah, and establishing those relationships are just so crucial, right? Because at the end of the day, you are that project manager.
Absolutely, and I get a lot of you're managing the project, and look, Steve, you have a lot of projects that go on. You have a lot of stuff. It's a relationship business. You can say this is a computer system, and you have a computer program, but you need people to enter the stuff for the computer program. So it's not without emotions, and it's not without people that have bad days, and it's not without misperceptions of things. And it's a relationship business. And I would say that the biggest challenge I think investors have a lot of times is the reality is that they feel that they have something that everyone else should kind of go to them for. And it's not a synergistic relationship between a vendor, between a tenant, between an agent. And this is a capitalistic society. I mean, people can leave when they want to leave. They can do business with who they want to do business with. People do business with who they like. They don't do business because they have to. You buy into the passion, not the plan. And if you have the right passion and you're trying to set up your business, and I have people that tell me, they say, well, I only have one property, so no vendor is going to listen to me. And I tell them, I go, it's funny, you're telling me all the things that you can't do, but you're not telling me what you can do. You can set up a relationship with your vendor. You can do these things, but you're choosing not to. You're giving me excuses, and nobody cares about your problems. Nobody cares that you only have one property. The reality is if you have a good relationship and you set up the right mindset and the right attitude, and look, I'm not trying to say you're going to ride to your property on a unicorn and over a rainbow. I mean, there's bad days, and we all know that as investors, but it's your mindset when you get into this situation of dealing with it and not having that, you need to do this for me, or you're going to rip me off. And how are you, you're overcharging me. A vendor, they have a business. They're trying to create, they have profit margins, just like you have profit margins. They want to run a business. There is a way to synergistically work this correctly where it's not one way, because when it's one way, you're going to run out of people to do business with. So just kind of before we even get started, this is a relationship situation, and you've got to have relationships, and you've got to be relationship minded in the make ready process.
Correct. And I also want to point out is that, in the last couple of episodes, we talked about thinking about your property as a business. You're managing it as a business. a lot of times landlords, if you just have a couple, one or two properties, they're still a little bit more on the employee mindset, right? And as employees, right, the mindset is, hey, my income is kind of fixed, so I need to find the best way to save money. And it's really crucial that you change into the mindset of a business owner, because everything is not an expense, it's an investment.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing, it's the same thing as saying, I'm going to buy a car, but I'm not going to put new tires on it ever. And even if I blow a tire, I'm just going to drive around with 3 good ones and 1 rim. It's not going to work. And it's the same, it sounds stupid, right? But when you put it towards a car, something we know, you go, oh, well, yeah, that's stupid. That would never work. But when it comes to your rental property, that's what we do sometimes. Sometimes we're driving around on 3 wheels and a rim. And we think that's okay. And then we're shocked when the business model doesn't work. We're shocked when the tenants, open the door and punch out of the car. I mean, that's the reality. And nobody wants to do business with us because you think, well, I bought the car. I've got car payments. Why should I have to change the oil? I shouldn't have to put windshield wipers on this. I've got a car payment. And a lot of investors think, well, I've got the house. I bought the house. The tenant's in the property. Why should I have to fix things? Which a lot of times that leads to the make ready, because the tenant says, I'm not going to stay here with a broken this or broken that. And the owner's not running it like a business. So what happens is they end up getting a make ready on their own because they did not run it like a business and they didn't have a business plan. They didn't set expectations. And that's another subject that I'm pretty passionate about, as you can tell.
Yeah, exactly. It's how you manage the expectations and how you manage all these relationships. Everybody that you are interfacing with, you need to have a very, very good relationship and build those rapport with them. So Now let's talk about how we manage these relationships with the vendors and kind of the first step of getting the property make ready. So let's talk about bid.
Sure.
What kind of bids do we need to ask for?
Well, first thing I would suggest is always get at least 3 bids, if you can. If it's, again, their time is of the essence. And one thing you want to remember, you're running a business and that business needs cash flow. It needs revenue. So you sitting around for a month waiting to get, because you work on the weekdays and you don't have time to get there till the weekends, that's a business strategy problem. Getting the make ready and getting this thing producing revenue should be the utmost priority. And if it's not the utmost priority, then it needs to be, and maybe you should not be self-managing it if you don't have the time to keep your eyes on it and run it like a business. I recommend get a couple bids, at least 2, to make sure if this isn't something you do all the time. But my suggestion is understand what pricing costs. Nowadays online, you can get an idea of what it costs for a standard make ready. You can understand what is needed on the bids. And I would also have a conversation with the owner. Now, for us with Empire, we manage, 900 something houses. So we have set expectations. We know what paint we want to use. We know what carpet we want to use. So we have set price schedules of what we want. And look, you can do it one time, set this price point, and from there you can kind of get a guesstimate of what it should cost. So for example, you go into a property and you're thinking, okay, paint is $1.75, whatever it is, a square foot. And I got, 2,000 square feet. So it should be X dollars. And then I've got this, and this should be X dollars. So you can get a wild guess of what you think it should be. So if somebody comes back and they say, yep, $20,000, you're going, whoa, where are you coming up with that number? Now, my suggestion is there's a difference between a make ready on a rental and a make ready on your house. And a lot of people need to understand, if you give a contractor a nail, they're going to find a wall to hit it in, right? So if you say, get this property ready, what's their perception of ready, right? So for example, we want to get our properties turned as quick as we can, and we want to provide a safe, comfortable house for someone to live in. That does not mean re-roof the property. That does not mean, tear out the walls. There's things that need to be done for speed. Speed is the key in anything. Velocity of money, you got to get that velocity of money coming back to you. The only way you can do that is get the bid, get them as quick as you can, compare them. If both guys are saying you need a new roof, then maybe you need to think about getting a new roof. But if one guy says, yeah, you need a whole new roof, and the other guy says, no, the roof is fine, I'm going to err on the side of caution and go, you know what? I'm going with the guy that says it's fine. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to say, I had another bid and the guy said I need a new roof. Tell me what you're thinking. And some people like to play the cat and mouse game. I don't want to tell this contractor what's needed. That's not a good business model. You can be upfront with them. Say, listen, do you see factual data that says I need a new roof? It's common sense. You do or you don't, And if you're not qualified to answer that question, then maybe you shouldn't be running that business of owning a property. Maybe you need to offload that. But my point is that when you get these bids and you get an idea of what it should cost, at some point you need to make a decision and get the thing ready. And again, I would do more of telling the owner or telling the vendor what you think it needs. I want, when it comes to make readies, and I know this is one of your questions, but I'll just get into it. New paint, new carpet or clean carpet. It's very hard to clean carpet after a couple turns. Those are the two major factors that will get a property rented and is most bang for the buck. Meaning, the smell of new paint, the smell of new carpet is amazingly good for getting a property re-rented. I mean, it just is, right? You walk into a house and you smell fresh paint, you know it's clean, right? Because when somebody walks into a property and it's not clean and the carpet's dirty and you're going, hey, this is going to be clean. I promise I'm going to clean this soon. The challenge is a tenant that's looking at this property, they're imagining their furniture in the house. And you can't imagine your stuff in someone else's dirt and someone else's trash. So immediately you're turned off before you even walk into the property and think about putting your stuff and where's my couch going to be and where's this, when you're seeing trash and dirt or smell. The smell is a huge thing. And that's why, it's one of your senses. That's why when you paint and you put carpet, there's that smell and that triggers something in your brain to go, this place is clean.
Wow. Excellent. Wow. What an amazing tip. What about anything else, Steve? Would you typically, let's say, I got this house that I'm ready to rent. It's, the contractors ended with this tenant. What are some of the things I should be looking at inside the house to do an estimate?
So first of all, when you drive up to let's just start when you drive up to a property, first impressions are everything. I don't care what anybody says. If you do not have the yard landscaped, meaning the yard mowed, edged, mulch in the areas that can be mulched, colorful flowers, just imagine yourself driving up to a house that has overgrown limbs, trash everywhere, mail sticking out of the thing, no flowers, dead spots, or you drive up to a house that's manicured, it has mulch, it has nice colorful flowers, there's no signs of, it's curb appeal. That is the first impression. The question you have to ask yourself is, would somebody get out of the car with the way it looks? And what is their first impression? They are picturing themselves driving up to this house every day to see their family. And do they feel that this is a place that they would want to live? Not where you want to live, not where I want to live. Where does the tenant want to live? There's a difference. So again, if you're in a rental area, you don't put a big water fountain in the front yard because you want a water fountain. You do with what the neighborhood, commands. So the first thing is that. Second thing is walking up to the front door. I look at the front door. Is the front door clean and is it painted? A painted front door is huge value for not a lot of money. Those are the little things that you're catching. If imagine walking up to a front door and it's all scratched and dingy and dented, or window pane broken, that gives you that first impression, right? Then you reach for the door handle. When you reach for the door handle, what does that door handle look like? Is it worn and used, or is it nice and shiny and new? Again, you haven't even looked at the house. Right now, you're looking at first impressions. So door handles, locks, replace. They're cheap, but there's a lot of bang for the buck. Painting a front door does wonders for first impressions. So right out of the gate, curb appeal, front door, door handle, door lock, right? Now you open the door. Again, as dumb as it sounds, I have to say it, take out all the trash from the property. Don't leave a couch from someone else still in the property. It sounds dumb, but I've seen so many houses that just leave stuff in the garage. They leave trash in the house, and then they wonder why it's not renting. It's like, who would want to walk into a property with someone else's dingy couch that's going to be gone? They're sitting there looking at this going, and the bigger problem is, and I did this before, so I know, when you when you take a tenant that's okay with it, that's a bigger problem. That's when you have a bigger problem. So I've done that. We used to, when Pete and I had our properties, when we first started this, we had trashy houses. People would come and we wouldn't even have the make ready done, and they would take the house as is. And when they would take the house as is, guess what? They kept it the same way they got it, and it was just trash. So carpet, paint, if the carpet can be cleaned, you can clean it. Now, what we do in our rentals is for the tenant, when they leave, they have to give the property back the same condition they got it. Meaning we give it to them with professionally cleaned carpets. We expect it back with professionally cleaned carpets. We don't accept them going to Home Depot and doing it themselves. I want to see a receipt from a professional company because that's how I gave it to you. If you can't do it, then we're going to charge you for professional cleaning. That's in the lease agreement that they sign on the front end. We will actually give them the information to our carpet cleaner, and they can get a discount using our guy. We want them to use our carpet cleaner because we know our carpet cleaner is going to do a good job. And our carpet cleaner is going to tell us, you know what, this can't be cleaned. It's got to be replaced. So we've actually worked out a deal with our carpet cleaner to say, hey, give them a discount. And if it can't be cleaned, let us know. Don't do the job. Let us know so that we can get it replaced. Because there's no sense in trying to clean a dirty carpet. That's wasting money.
Correct.
So paint is, the carpet I've said. Paint, if there's any doubt, just repaint it. And not only repaint it, but repaint the trim. The white trim that goes around the molding, if you have that in your property, that's a huge benefit. And again, I talked to you about the door handles. If they need to be replaced, replace all the door handles. It's not expensive, and it looks really good. The biggest thing I would say that is overlooked is switch plate covers. All the outlet covers and switch plate covers to turn the lights on and off, when they're dingy, you don't notice that they're dingy. When they're white and they're popping white, it makes such a difference to do that. It's not expensive stuff, but it's these little things that make a difference. And then make sure you get it professionally cleaned. Getting it professionally cleaned is huge. Also, I would recommend get the power turned on and keep the air conditioning on. You want to keep and it's not a matter of it being hot or not being hot. You want the air to be circulating through the house. The next thing I would say is making sure every single light bulb has been replaced or is working. Just making sure it's working. The last thing you want is a tenant to walk in and, you have a ceiling fan with 4 bulbs and only 2 are working. It gives a bad impression. You want to make the house as light as possible. So my recommendation is when you walk into the house, get all the blinds up, get all of the, open up all the windows if you can open them. If it's not openable, don't open. But make sure all the blinds are open. Turn on every single light in the house. You want to make it look as open and as appealing as possible because this is the first impression they're getting when they're walking in. You want it to look big and spacious. If they're walking in and it's dark and it's dingy and it's kind of stinks because it's closed up, again, it's a bad impression. So
you need to provide an optimal experience for the person touring the place. Right? Yeah, everything needs to be perfect to them. So then, and you're going to increase your chance of getting that rented.
When you put the time and money in the beginning, the reverberating effect is huge. You've got to put the time and effort into the front end to help on the back end. So, you know what? I tell some people say, I don't want to put all this money into the house. I don't want to paint it. I don't want to do this. Okay. Well, the money that you thought you were going to save, you're going to lose from nobody renting the property week after week, maybe month after month. So that perceived value when you saved $1,000 or $2,000 in your property, you lost it on the back end from loss of cash flow. And the biggest thing people do not understand and they don't do until they've walked that walk is they don't put into factor the mental stress of having a vacant property. And the mental stress is a huge thing, man. I mean, I've had many vacant properties. It's not a good feeling when you're going, man, how do I get this thing rented? Because I've had a vacant property. It was vacant for 3 days, and someone came in, they stripped all the wiring, they stripped all the copper, they stripped everything. The insurance didn't cover it. It cost me $18,000, and that was still vacant. I mean, it sucks, man. It's not a good feeling when that happens. And it's one of those things that, I mean, I couldn't have done anything. It was only 3 days it was empty, but still having an empty property, this is reality. People will go in and steal stuff from your property. They will vandalize your property. And, you have a vacant property and now you have vandalism. It's not a good feeling, because you still got to fix it to bring it back to par.
Right. And not to mention potential squatters, depending on where you are.
Depending on where you are, yeah.
And Steve, I have to bring this up. What you just said is it's called broken window syndrome. Have you heard of the broken window syndrome?
I have not.
I think it's in one of those Freakonomics terms, but basically, maybe it's one of those other books. I forgot where I read it from now. But the idea is if you walk around a neighborhood and if you start seeing a broken window in one of the homes and it's not fixed, after a while, you're going to have another broken window and another window, and the whole neighborhood just starts going downhill from there because of the idea or the psychology that the broken window is acceptable. So what you brought up, if you have a new tenant that don't mind about all these things, like they're gonna think everything is fair game and everything is open, and most of the time when they leave, you're gonna have a lot more things you gotta fix.
Yeah, I mean, we actually, believe it or not, it sounds dumb, but we like when we get a tenant that moves in that has a big list of things they want fixed when they move in, because we know they care about the property and they want something nice. Some owners complain. They're like, I don't like the fact that this tenant's complaining about all this stuff. It's like, but they care about the property. You want them to care about their property. You want to give them a good experience. You don't want them to be okay with it. I mean, I've had properties that for 3-4 months, it's another story, but I had a property that, I never heard from the guy for like a year and a half. Guy paid his rent on time, every time. Older gentleman, no problems. Well, it turned out it was a what do you call it? A fencing house for them to store stolen stuff in. It was a warehouse. No one ever lived there. The guy never called me. I never called him. He never complained. We had a hurricane come through. I went by there. He said, no, everything's fine. No problem. I said, okay, great. You need anything? No, don't need anything. Okay. Well, I got a call from the police department one time and they said they raided the house and they found a stolen semi full of hijacked vodka and weapons. And I was like, it was an older gentleman. I'm like, that house? He said, yeah. I said, I never heard from the guy. And he said, that's why. I thought, okay, good to know, but good point. I mean, not that I want people complaining, but the reality is that's the real world. And, you've got to set yourself up to think of these things. And like you said, I mean, the broken window, very true. I can see it's so micro, you don't even think about it. You're like, a broken window, that's no big deal. But it's like the same thing with graffiti. I grew up in Los Angeles, a lot of graffiti. It starts in one area. Once it's allowed, it's like 2 places, 3 places. And then it goes. And then, it's like epidemic and you can't stop it, and it takes a whole movement to stop it then. And it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it kind of goes back to what we were just saying before we officially got started is the mindset that you have. Sometimes it's kind of counterintuitive, in the business world. Sometimes we think one thing and then next thing we know, you need to think this way if you want to be successful.
Yeah. And a lot of it, just, kind of staying on this maintenance theme, we think how we should have something done. We think, how would I want this done in my house? Or what should someone charge me? What should a tenant tolerate? We think, well, if I lived there, I wouldn't complain about that. It's like, but you don't live there. You own a business. And that's the biggest challenge I think we all have, because it's almost a negative, because we know so much about living in a property, living in a house, living in an apartment, living in whatever. We equate living in a house to owning a 4 walls and a roof that has a business running in it, which is called the rental business. 4 walls and a roof is not the house you live in. And you now have a business, and that business has laws and has regulations, and you have to abide by those. So what we would accept, a perfect example is if you and I in our house, we had air conditioning go out, and we called the air conditioning guy, as they all go out on Saturday night, right? On 4th of July weekend, that's when our air conditioners all go out. And when it goes out and the air conditioning guy says, you know what, I can't get there till next Friday because I'm just backed up. Everyone's air conditioning went out. It's a brownout. You're going to have to just deal with it. Sorry. And as a resident of a house, we go, well, that sucks, but there's really nothing we can do. Otherwise, call another air conditioning guy. However, if you're a tenant, there's Texas property code. Texas property code says that if it's over a certain degree, and I believe it's 83 degrees, you have so many hours of days that this has to be rectified. Otherwise, you have to put them up in a hotel. So tenants have more rights than we do when it comes to fixing and repairing things. So it's not a matter of what would we tolerate. Well, if my air conditioning went out, I can't get it fixed. Doesn't matter. This is a different situation. This is a situation of a paying client and with rights. And that's what you have to remember. It's the same thing fixing a house, right? You want to get a house ready. You know, we used to always use the chuck in a truck guy. We'd use the cheap guy. He would be the lowest bidder, but you'd have to go back there 3 or 4 times to fix the same thing. And we're like, oh my God, now the tenant's pissed. The tenant's leaving. Then we'd call a real plumber. A real plumber would go out. He'd charge us what we paid the 3 times the other guy to go out there. And he fixed it once and it was done and it was done right. So we're like, did we really save any money? We lost the tenant. It cost us 3 times the mental stress, the time to make 3 phone calls, deal with the bitching back and forth of all the tenants, this and that. And we still had to call a plumber to fix it at the end. You don't come out ahead.
And those are all good lessons, right? Those are all very, very good lessons because it's because we have to deal with all those headaches that now we appreciate kind of the teams that we have, right? And the systemization that we put in place that relieve all those mental headaches.
You know, sometimes as property owners and landlords, we get so far in the weeds, right? We get into that tunnel mentality, that mindset. Sometimes you got to get pulled back out of it and look at it as an owner, because we all get in there as operators. You do it in your business, I do it in my business, and you get deep in because we want to figure things out. But we're thinking about it from an operator's perspective, not an owner's perspective. And sometimes you got to remove yourself from it. You got to step back and say, okay, what is the business that I'm doing, and what is the business plan, so that I'm not being reactionary and I'm not just, firing at the hip and just trying to get things done and putting out fires, and I'm not strategically planning, like setting up relationships with vendors, having those conversations with them, creating relationships. It can be done. Vendors love when you have relationships with them. Even if you have one property, it really doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's a people business and you're being proactive in setting it up. It may be 2-3 years, but I tell you what, if you had lunch with that guy and you say, hey, remember I bought you lunch? We had that conversation. He's going to go, yeah, I do remember you. Yeah. Let's see what we can do. Because you took the time and set up the relationship.
Yeah. And having those A teams around you where, things just get done and you don't have to worry about those headaches, we would never take it for granted anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. It's so important.
It's very important to set it up right so that you don't have to worry about those headaches. Now, Steve, I know, Steve has a lot of eBooks, and today for all the attendees, we're going to give you guys this ebook. It's about, it's a roadmap for being a real estate investor. And Steve, you also have a landlord manual that you are promoting. You guys have authored this not too long ago, I believe. And it's a very fantastic manual. Tell us about this book.
Sure. So, we get a lot of investors, maybe they don't want property management services, and that's fine. I get it. Not everybody needs property management. But if you're going to own a property or you want to buy a property, you need to make sure that you understand the laws, you understand what the regulations are. How do you vet a tenant? What are the protected classes and discrimination laws that you can and cannot ask questions on tenants, right? How do you screen for pets? What are the dangerous breed lists that insurance companies will catch? There's a lot of things that you don't know that we deal with on a daily basis every single day. So Pete, my business partner, and myself, we created this manual. It's called the Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook. And it's basically a step-by-step reference guide that you use. Like, what is a make-ready? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? How do I get bids? Just like we talked about. This is all in this manual. And this is so vital for the people that have a rental property and they just want to make sure that, maybe they don't do evictions all the time, but they need to learn how to do eviction when it happens. And this manual will walk you through how to do an eviction. How do you file a forcible detainer? How do you do a writ of possession? If you only do it once or twice in your whole investing career, if you do it wrong, it will bankrupt you, because you can have a tenant living in there for 6 or 9 months and you're not creating any revenue. That is not a good thing, right? So again, we created this manual. It's called the Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook. You can go to our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com. You can buy it. It's basically the guts of how we run our company. So if you're not going to use property management, you need to buy this book and make sure that you're doing it correctly so that you don't get it in front of a lawsuit. Because unfortunately, when you're standing in front of the judge or a lawyer, it's too late. You need to be proactive and you need to think of these things. And that's why we created the book.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic book. And I always preach this, having the right education and knowledge is so crucial. And we're out here, we want to share, our lessons and all our war stories, our mistakes to the world, is so that folks don't have to repeat them again.
Absolutely.
And that's what this book is all about. It's helping you ease up that learning curve. You don't have to make those same mistakes again if you know how to do it. Know how to do it right the first time.
Don't need to reinvent the wheel, man.
Yeah, the business model is already there. So there's so many cool things that these smart. Steve and Pete. I got a chance to visit their office just a couple of months ago in Houston. I was always very impressed by how professionally you guys run your business and your systemization and your methodology. And so those are all the things that we admire. And I actually got a chance to take a look at the book a little more today. And I was very impressed by the amount of knowledge that they share there. So I highly recommend you guys check out the book.
Yeah. It's there's no magic. We don't have any magic pills in there. This is just what we do on a daily, weekly basis. And this is how we handle things. And this is the nuts and bolts of, if you want to be an investor, you need to do this because you've got to run it like a business, because it will bite you. It'll rear its ugly head when you least expect it. You got to know what you're doing.
You got to know what you're doing, and then you got to go and do it. So those are all very crucial things. Guys, I want to thank you so much, Steve, for joining us and sharing your knowledge today. We'll have Steve back again next month to share with us another lesson.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Absolutely.
All right.
See ya. Okay.